Good morning. The title of this talk is For the Love of God. I found that title interesting because I grew up in Ohio. And when someone was frustrated about something in Ohio, they would say, "For the love of Pete," or "For Pete's sake." And so when I saw the love of God, it immediately took me back to that. And so I checked it out on Google. I thought, am I really remembering that, or am I making it up? Paul thought I was making it up. So I checked it out, and I Googled "For the Love of Pete," and came up all this information about how at that time it was not appropriate to use the word God in such a thing. It was seen as blasphemous. And so people would say, "For the love of Pete," or "For Pete's sake." But for the Catholics, they thought that that meant St. Pete, St. Peter. And I grew up Catholic, so I guess that's why I resonated with that. But they had one example that they gave. "For the love of Pete, can we just pick a restaurant and stop searching? I'm hungry." So it's when you were frustrated back then that you would call on Pete. Anyway, I thought it was pretty funny. So this morning we're going to let go of Pete. We're going to let go of frustration and focus on the phrase "for the love of God." It's a recognition that God is the magnificent presence, a magnificent energy everywhere present, all-powerful, all-knowing. So for the love of God, we are here. For God's love, we are here. And I have a lot of things to be grateful for, and recognizing that the Creator that I call God, or infinite intelligence, had an intention that we live this life in ways that we didn't really anticipate. To be more than we thought we could be, to be all that we can be, to be more love in the world, to bring greater love into the world. So I have a story to share, and a couple other things that you usually don't hear on a Sunday, but I was having fun with this Pete and God, for Pete's sake. And many of you remember our longtime members, they're still members, Harry and Frances Bliley. Well, they moved into a retirement center in Grass Valley several years ago to be closer to their daughter, Nancy. On Friday, Nancy called me, and she said, "I just knew you'd be able to help me because I'm very, very concerned how frail Mom and Dad are getting. And that lately they seem more focused on when the time comes." They're both 95, and they've been married 71 years. Isn't that awesome? It's just amazing. They're just marvelous people. But they're kind of getting focused on when the time comes. Nancy said her mom frequently goes on a rant about who's going to take care of Harry and how's it going to be, blah, blah, blah. And she goes on and on and on. And Nancy has not found a way to distract her, to kind of, "Stop, Mom, stop." She's just so frustrated. And so I thought it was, synchronicity in my life happens a lot. And I was thinking as she was expressing her frustration about my class Thursday on the Edinburgh Lectures, Thomas Troward, if you've ever taken Thomas Troward. Well, I also have a book by a man named Harry Gaze, who was a friend of Troward's. And he writes about all these cute little things that Troward did, because he was quite a fascinating man. And so I said, "Well, let me share a story, Nancy, that just came to mind." Every so often, Thomas Troward's wife would go on a rant. And she would talk, and she would go, and she would go. And it was so frustrating to him. Finally, one day when she was in the middle of this long rant, he looked her in the eye and he said, "Cock-a-doodle-doo." And she stopped. She just stopped. And that became a joke with them. They fell together laughing hysterically. And so it became a joke in their family. And Nancy started laughing, and she couldn't stop. So she was laughing, I was laughing. She said, "That's a beautiful thing. I'm going to try it the next time that happens." And then I gave her a few other ideas to consider. I first met Harry and Frances when I moved to Reading in 1987. I moved to take a job at the wood-fired power plant in Anderson. My job was to find all the scrap wood from sawmills to burn to make electricity. Well, P&M Cedar, if any of you remember that company, was here in Anderson, and Harry was the manager of making sure they sold off all their wood waste, the chips, the sawdust, and the bark. Well, we got along really well, but we were both pretty tough nuts to crack when it came to what the price should be. And so every quarter, I had to meet with suppliers, and we would discuss what's happening in the marketplace, how much wood is being produced, how much waste is being produced, what are the wood-fired power plants, because there were 9 in the North State at the time, how much inventory they had. So we put all this together, and we would come up with a price. Sometimes it took a while, but when we did come up with a price, we would both smile, shake hands, and see you next quarter. Well, I was really surprised some months later when somebody suggested I go to this thing it was the La Quinta Inn at the time on Hilltop, Church of Religious Science. Sounds suspicious. And I asked what it was about, and it sounded like it was everything I already believed. So Sunday morning, I walked into that inn, and there was Harry. And I thought, oh, this is really cool. He was happy to see me, introduced me to Frances, and we got along really well. They invited me to dinner so they could learn more. We could learn more about each other from a personal standpoint. So it was really nice. And what I found after I learned what religious science was all about is they epitomized living the principles. They lived the principles. They had and still have immense faith in life, faith in God, trust in God, love of family, love of friends, love of their daughters, their families, and everyone they meet. And that was a long time ago, and I still find that's very true for them. So I called them Friday, a few hours after talking with Nancy, and I said, how are things going? And Frances said, they're going okay. Every day Harry gets up and he goes to the exercise room and exercises. He takes a walk and then he watches sports on TV. She said, I don't like sports, so I have my own TV. And she says, I've been following politics and it's driving me a bit crazy. But she said, and I quote, I know it's all right action, so I have great faith that it's all working out. I told her I was going to tell you this because in her words, that's pure metaphysics, that's pure Ernest Holmes, Thomas Troward, all the wise teachers of New Thought. You know, in my mind now, that includes Frances. Since they moved there several years ago, she said the management has changed over time, sometimes good, sometimes not. But so many people move through these places, and I mean through coming in and then they pass and more people come through. So it's not always been easy, but it's amazing to know it's okay. No matter how things are with all these people, I'm just loving them up anyway. Oh. To be in that state all the time. I'm sharing this because it's possible we can do it too. Harry and Frances see the love of God in everyone. They have 2 daughters. Nancy is one, and she's a retired doctor, hospital doctor. The other, Mary, is a nomadic artist. From day one, Frances told me Mary was challenging. Everything had to be her way. Nothing she or Harry did was right. But she became an amazing artist with a soul that had to travel around the world. She was never staying in one place very long. And this was very hard for Harry and Frances. Why can't you settle down and be like your sister? It's not meant to be. And so for many years, Mary traveled the world selling her art, living on next to nothing, and she was happy. There were months at a time where Harry and Frances didn't know where she was in the world, and that laid heavy on their heart. But occasionally she would just show up back at home, and she'd say, "I'm here to stay." No, it wasn't long before she's packing her things in her truck along with her dog, and off they go on another adventure. So Friday, when I called, I said to Frances, "How's Mary doing?" And she just lit up. I could tell it. I could tell it on the phone. Her heart was bursting with joy. She said, as Mary grew up, the more rebellious she became, the more Harry and I loved her up. And now I'm able to leave this earth in peace because Mary has found her place. She bought some acreage, just a few acres, in the desert in Arizona, on which there's a small house, which doesn't have regular electricity, it just has solar power, and doesn't have water. So every week she has to go into town, and Frances laughed. She buys water a penny a gallon and hauls it back to her little house. And she waters the vegetables that she grows and the plants, and even puts water out for the animals. Frances said, for Mary, living alone in the desert is a pace of life that suits her. I don't know how many people it would suit, but Mary has found her happiness. Every morning, Frances said she walks in the desert and loves the flowers and the birds and listens to all the sounds of the desert in the morning. And she's just at miraculous peace. So now when Mary calls, they talk about the past. They talk about her rebelliousness, and they talk about Mary's shift in consciousness. So she now realizes the wonderful parents that she has and had during all that time. So this is a story about love, about patience, obviously, and about acceptance of a child that was not going to live life the way you thought, that was called to be a wandering soul. She's her own unique person, and I guess many of you that know Harry and Frances, I just want you to know how happy they are. And like Frances said, I can now leave this earth in peace. So what else is going on with me? Well, I got to Science of Mind magazine that all this year, each issue will follow our Sunday talks. So For the Love of God is what you'll find in this month's issue. Eugene Holden writes a column of affirmations. And this month he writes, "I am the love of God. Every word I speak is anchored in love. Every act is an act of love from the highest point, seeing the good of all. I see only perfection, beauty, and peace. I stand as the light of love. I surrender to the power that love is as me. I'm opening my heart to see all colors of love. I am love in action." That's the best reason to buy that magazine today and hang that page on your bathroom mirror. Beautifully said. There's an article in it by Molly Brown, and she addresses what she calls the searing energy of reactivity in this country right now to anyone and anything, and the subsequent negative experiences that continue to perpetuate this discord. And I know you know what that feels like. On the flip side, she said, the other way to see it is to see it through the eyes of unconditional love. To use unconditional love to see that it's all okay. That's where we find the strength and the courage to walk that path. And we welcome everyone home for the love of God. February is also Black History Month, And so there are several articles about the colors of love. I love the way they put that, because in Centers for Spiritual Living, in the parent organization, a year or so ago, they created a commission on diversity and inclusion. It's a big focus in the organization. And on the cover of this month's issue are 4 African American leaders in our organization. And they each have a little part in the magazine, and it's really beautiful because they're honoring the oneness of us all. A few months ago, I started reading some books recommended by the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And the first one I read is How to Be an Anti-Racist. Not to say I'm not a racist, but how to be an anti-racist. And the other one is the Racial Healing Handbook. It's been very eye-opening for me. I guess growing up Catholic in my high school, there were only 2 African American people in 700 students. And so working in the Pacific Northwest in the timber industry, not a lot of diversity. Here in Redding, there's not a lot of diversity. It's 80%, I checked this on the internet, 80% white, 10% Hispanic, 3% Asian, 3% Native American, and 1% African American. So it gets real easy to not think about racism, but it's alive in our community, the greater community of Redding. I'm so grateful CSL has chosen to speak for diversity and inclusion, and it's a big, important focus area for the organization. I'm running for a place on the Leadership Council, and the votes will be taken at the conference next month, and they were interviewing me for 2 hours on Thursday. It was heavy. And the first question is CSL doing enough on diversity and inclusion? I knew that was coming, so I was well prepared. I've been the co-chair of the Ethics Committee for many years now, and recently we've had a spike in the number of complaints against ministers, against practitioners. And we've been kind of overwhelmed. And so we decided it's time to get more people on our committee. We already have 10 people, but when you have 3 per case, we could tell we needed more people. Now, people don't just come to us and say, I really want to be on the ethics committee. It's a heck of a commitment. So we knew we'd have to go hunting. We'd have to go looking for people. So we started calling various ministers around the country and saying, do you have any staff ministers or assistant ministers or people of color that might be interested in being on ethics? And I'm proud to say this month we're bringing on 3 new people of color onto our committee, and we're very happy about that. Tracy Brown, she's actually a practitioner, and she's the head of the Leadership Council. That's like the board of directors for the whole organization, and she's a practitioner. And she shares in here that the principles of Science of Mind call her to the highest standard of personal responsibility. And really that's what we're about. I've mentioned that to some people who come here and they say, well, if you could pick me up every Sunday and somebody could take me to classes, and I've often said, this is a teaching of personal responsibility. And it is. So instead of, like Tracy says, I'm never going to be a victim, I'm not going to make other people villains as if they're doing something wrong, but I'm grounding myself in the truth. God is all there is. Crystal Davis is another one on the cover, and she said the principles of Science of Mind keep her centered in her consulting business. And she knows every situation is bringing good to her in some way. Reverend Andriette Earle, she's the founding leader of Heart and Soul Center of Light in Oakland, a very big center in Oakland. And she said when she found Science of Mind, she had a life transformation. The principles inspire her toward her greatest yet to be, and I love that. It's inspiring her to her greatest yet to be. She knows her life is unfolding perfectly, and these resources that we have at our mind and our fingertips in this teaching will bring her the life she desires. Cynthia James is another minister. She has a global ministry, virtual ministry online. She said she uses these principles every day in every circumstance because there's nothing opposing God, so there's nothing opposing her dreams, her ambitions. Nothing opposing God, nothing opposing her dreams and ambitions, her desires. And so that brings me to the sad news this week of the death of Kobe Bryant and his daughter and the others in that helicopter crash. I've been reading all the articles about Kobe's life, and here is one person that had intense desires and dreams and went forward with it, confident in himself. And after he retired, he taught so many athletes. He became a one-man consulting shop, it said in the paper. He gave so much of himself to others who had the same desires and dreams that he did, and the world admires him greatly for that. Dreams and desires are also quite alive this afternoon in the Super Bowl game. I'm so excited about this game because it's the best against the best, isn't it? So it's hard to pick one team. The 49ers have worked extremely hard in their desires and dreams to be in the Super Bowl. And the Kansas City Chiefs haven't won a Super Bowl yet, but they've got one of the hottest young quarterbacks I've ever seen. Mahomes, yeah. He's amazing. If you don't know about him, he throws when he's off balance. Sometimes he throws backwards. Sometimes he uses a basketball play in the football game. And he even throws left-handed. They expect him to go here, and he goes there. He's an amazing person to watch. So that will give you an inspiring afternoon for the 49ers and for the Kansas City Chiefs, who both have intense desires and dreams. And they've put it into visioning. They've put it into their muscle memory, how they're going to move. Their desire, they're seeing their desire already accomplished. But in the end, only one team will win. So for us, it works the same way. That's the creative process. We put it into mind, we put it into subconscious mind with our energy, our desires, our words, our actions. Seed, soil, plant. We end up with an experience of life that matches that. So for Pete's sakes, let's let go of negativity. Just do it for Pete's sake. Replace it with love. And for the love of Pete, let go of judgment. Boy, how we judge some football plays. I hear Paul. What in the heck do they do that for? So letting go of judgment would make Pete pretty happy. Because in the end, it's only love that's going to heal the world, and we know that. And for the love of God, we believe that is so. So join me in a prayer for that. Because there is only one. And that one universal presence created each one of us with our own desires and dreams. Not God's desires and dreams, our own desires and dreams. And so when we center ourselves in that love energy that is the background energy of the universe, that we can tap into at any moment, we can have desires and dreams. Our soul will be going on into infinity. There is no reason not to desire, dream, love. Love everyone that you meet, just like Harry and Francis. Just spill love everywhere. And let the goodness come back to you in unique ways. I know you can do it. I can do it. And today I say we do it for Pete's sake. And so it is. Thank you.